Hey everyone, thanks for joining in. You're listening to E412 Catalyst. E412 Catalyst exists to equip and encourage everyone to be making disciples in the everyday stuff of life. My name is Andrew Manwaran. I've been a pastor for over 20 years, and nothing thrills me more than to unleash God's people for God's purpose of making disciples. Let's dive in. Hey friends, just before you have taken this next podcast episode, I'm just so glad that you do. I wanted to reach out to you personally and ask if you've been impacted, encouraged, strengthened by what you're hearing on the E412 Catalyst. I just want to personally invite you to take the next step. There's so much more training, more in-depth training that is available to you. This fall, we're launching a new round of E412 training. This is church-based training. It's for the church, by the church, in the church. It's a gospel-centered pathway to equip you to be an everyday disciple or a future pastor or even as a current pastor, to equip biblical counselors and church leaders. The training is in-depth. It's extremely practical. I guarantee you'll be challenged and you'll learn to love the church and others and God so much more. Whether you're called to disciple, counsel, lead, plant, pastor, we'd love to walk with you. Registration is open right now. And it's very, very, very affordable. We just ask you cover the price of the books and give a small donation of $100 to cover tech fees and help us be advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ. You can learn more and apply at e412training.org, or you can email us at e412training@gmail.com and ask any questions that you might have. Let's get equipped to make disciples in the everyday stuff of life. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome back to the E412 Catalyst. This is where we are fixing our eyes on the glory of God with the ultimate goal of being transformed into the image of Jesus Christ. I'm Andrew, and I'm grateful you're joining me for this next episode of E412 as we're journeying into the immutability of God. Last time, we explored the big picture truth that God never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. In a world that constantly shifts, that truth is an anchor for our hearts. Today we're zooming in. We're going to consider how God never changes in his person, that is his being, and he never changes in his attributes, his character. And I want us to start here. If you've ever wondered whether God's love for you might grow cold, if you've ever worried that maybe God is tired of your failures, or if you've ever feared that his promises might not apply to you anymore, then friend, this episode is for you. So let's start with God's person, his essence, who he is, and we're going to circle back to that passage again in Exodus chapter 3. In this passage, God introduces himself to Moses with one of the most profound declarations, if not the most profound declaration in all of Scripture. Moses pops the question, "Who should I say sent me?" And God replies, "I am who I am." That name, Yahweh, reveals something incredible and breathtaking and astonishing. God doesn't just exist, he is. He's not becoming something new. He's not improving. He's not dependent on anything outside himself to be who he is. This is what theologians call aseity, and we, a few episodes ago, explored aseity, God's self-existence. God didn't come from anyone. He didn't start being at some point in time. He is, which means he doesn't change. He can't change. Let me give you a few key truths here. God is eternal, which means no beginning, no end, and he's self-sufficient, which means he needs nothing to exist. Tie that into the fact that God is also perfect. There's no room for improvement. This is the God we worship and behold. Psalm 102 puts it like this, and I love this. The psalmist declares, "Of old you laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. They will all wear out, the stars, the planets. They will wear out like a garment. You will change them like a robe." What a picture that is. They will pass away, but you, speaking of God, are the same, and your years have no end. That's Psalm 102, 25-27. Everything in this world changes. Even the heavens will wear out, but not God. Remember James 1:17 adds in this truth, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Not even a shadow, no variation, not even a flicker. God's character never changes. He is immutable. Now let's talk about God's attributes, his perfections, his character traits. And I think things get deeply personal and practical here, and I can't explore all of that. We're just skimming the surface here, and I hope it's encouraging you to dig deep. In fact, that will be some of the application for this podcast. But we're going to walk through a few of God's attributes and see what it means, the significance of the fact that they never change. Think about God's power. Was God powerful when he created the world? Was he powerful when he spoke galaxies into existence simply with a word? Absolutely. And God is just as powerful right now. He doesn't tire. His battery level doesn't decrease. He doesn't age. He doesn't need a spiritual protein shake to keep going. He says in Isaiah 40, have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. So he's unchanging in his power. He's also unchanging in his wisdom. Was God wise when he set the stars in their place? Was he wise when he designed DNA? Was he wise when he designed your eyeball? God didn't need advice then. He didn't ask anyone what he's doing. He knew what he's doing because he's full of wisdom. He doesn't learn. He doesn't forget. His counsel is always perfect. Romans 11:33 explodes into praise. Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and how inscrutable his ways. God is also unchanging when it comes to his justice, not just his wisdom and power, but his justice. Was God just when he judged sin in Noah's day? How about Sodom and Gomorrah? How about the cross? The answer is emphatically yes. God's justice is not some Old Testament mood. There's not one God in the Old Testament and one God in the New Testament. It's who he is. And his justice never softens. And that's not bad news. It is bad news if you're not trusting in Jesus Christ, but it's the best news, the most satisfying and assuring news when you know that God's justice was so fully satisfied in Jesus Christ on the cross. And of course, there's God's love. And it's interesting, as much as the Bible talks about God's love, many of us struggle here. We believe and we understand God's word when it says he is loving, but we seem to struggle if his love is consistent. So I just want to say very, very clearly, God's love never fades. God's love never wavers. Nothing can separate you from God's love. God's love never depends on your performance. Romans 5:8 says, God demonstrates his own love for us in this, while we were still what? While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And that love hasn't changed. It doesn't change when you have a great week. It doesn't change when you totally blew it. You can't make God love you more, and you can't make him love you less. Isn't that incredible? That's incredible truth. And think about God's mercy. Some of you might be wondering, what if I come to God again and again with the same struggle? Doesn't he get tired of me? No, he doesn't get tired of you. God's mercy is not on a timer. Lamentations 3 says his mercies are new every morning. And because God doesn't change, you can count on his mercies being there tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. God is always the same. There's a Latin phrase over the years that theologians have used to describe this amazing truth. It's the Latin phrase semper idem, which means always the same. Take any one of God's attributes or his character, and you can write that over the top. His wisdom, semper idem. God's faithfulness, semper idem. God's grace, semper idem. God's righteousness, always the same, semper idem. Again and again and again, whether you're talking about his faithfulness, his grace, his righteousness, it's always the same. Always the same. His patience, always the same. Why is that so important? Well, it's like we've been saying, we live in a world of shifting moods and values. We're used to disappointment. People make promises and they fail. Emotions run hot and cold. Circumstances blindside us, but not God, never God. He is the rock. All other ground is sinking sand. So let me quickly give you 3 encouragements here. Number 1, you can rest in his love. You don't have to perform to stay in God's good graces. You just have to abide in Jesus. He'll never change, neither will his love. Number 2, you can depend on God's character. God isn't going to be holy one day and permissive the next. He's not going to be merciful one day and distant the next. God's responses to your sin, your prayers, your worship, they're rooted in the same beautiful, perfect being of God. Number 3, you can be changed by his unchangingness. That's a funny word to say, his unchangingness. But here's the irony. You and I long for stability, but we're unstable. We crave consistency, but we're inconsistent. So what must we do? What do? We behold. Behold the one who is always the same. And 2 Corinthians 3:18 says that as you behold the glory of the Lord, you are transformed into his image. Oh, friends, the more you stare at the beauty of God's unchanging character, the more your own heart will be steadied. Not perfect, but anchored, growing in godliness, becoming like Jesus Christ. So today, this week, if you feel like you failed God, if you feel like you somehow let up, remember, God never changes. If you feel dry or distant or cold, remember, God hasn't gone anywhere. If you feel insecure about the future, remember, his promises haven't changed. Let me challenge you with this. Don't just listen to this episode and move on, but you take 5 minutes today, 5 minutes, and reflect on one of God's attributes that bring you comfort. Meditate on how it never changes. Think about his justice or his grace or his love or his wisdom or his faithfulness. Whichever attribute of God is sweet to you, and tie it to his immutability, his unchanging nature, and just meditate on that for 5 minutes. Dwell on that. Get lost in his grace. Get lost in his love. Get lost in his wisdom and his faithfulness. Remember, as you're doing that, you're beholding, and you're becoming what you behold. So let's keep on beholding our glorious, unchanging God and see our hearts be steadied before him. Well, thanks again for joining me for today's episode of the E412 Catalyst. I hope it's encouraged you. Maybe you know a friend or a family member who you could pass it on to. Maybe it's the exact truth they need to hear today. When we learn God's truth, it's never just for us. God always wants us to pass it along to others, that we might be a disciple who's making disciples. And in our next episode, we're going to take a deep dive into how God's plans and promises never change. When life feels uncertain, God's purposes remain firm. Until then, keep beholding, keep becoming, and be a disciple who makes disciples. Thank you so much for joining me today on E412 Catalyst. If you found this information helpful and would like more encouragement to be living on mission for our great God, follow us on our social media channels and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at E412 Training. You can also explore our many resources at e412training.org. See you next time.